Greetings Kaiju fans and welcome to another countdown. A few weeks ago was the Electronic Entertainment Expo, more widely known across video game culture as E3. While I was watching Microsoft show off more games I would be getting for my PS4 than Sony, I started thinking about the King of the Monsters stint in video game history. Godzilla starred in many more video games than you'd expect, but like most licensed games, their quality ranges from the abysmal to the excellent. So why not take a look at the best of the bunch? For today's episode, we're going to count down my top 10 favorite Godzilla video games. Number 10. Godzilla, Monster of Monsters for the Nintendo Entertainment System. While it wasn't the very first Godzilla video game ever made, it was definitely one of the earliest to be recognized worldwide. A classic side-scroller for the good old NES, you take control of Godzilla or Mothra and traverse across 8 different worlds, facing off against alien spaceships, military foes, and a wide range of kaiju bosses. And speaking of, those bosses are actually pretty varied, from Godzilla staples like King Ghidorah and Mechagodzilla to lesser beasts like Hedra and Bagan, to totally off-the-walls what are you doing here Ghidorah and Moguera. It's not any higher on this list because it does get pretty repetitive and the controls for Mothra and at times Godzilla are frustrating to deal with. But despite all that, it's a classic kaiju video game that absolutely deserves some recognition. Number 9. Godzilla Trading Battle for the Sony PlayStation. Definitely the oddest pick on this list, but for good reasons. A Japanese-only card-based strategy game for the original PlayStation, this is another game with a large roster of monsters, featuring characters even more obscure than Monster of Monsters. I mean, when's the last time you saw Magma in a video game? While the gameplay itself seems decent for the most part, this game gains extra points for having a whopping 6 brand new kaiju exclusively for this game. Bulk Zardon, Gyarumu, Shigan, Razin, Barugaran, and Vagnosaurus are all great additions to the Toho roster that I hope we see again sometime soon. Godzilla Trading Battle isn't likely to top anyone's favorites list, but it is a unique game that is more than welcome as number 9. Number 8. Super Godzilla for the Super Nintendo. This game could basically be described as an improved upgrade of Monster of Monsters. More side-scrolling action and more kaiju boss fights, this game is probably one of the most widely played Godzilla games on YouTube. Much of that is probably due to the amazing soundtrack, the fast action gameplay, and the inclusion of more original monsters. This time around we have Super Godzilla, the powered-up form of our favorite kaiju, sporting brand new abilities and a look based on an unused Space Godzilla concept art. Opposing him is the infamous Bagan, another unused kaiju from a wide range of Heisei-era Godzilla movies. While at times slow, repetitive, and a bit annoying with certain mechanics and controls, it's a classic of kaiju action on the Super Nintendo. Number 7. Godzilla Generations Maximum Impact for the Sega Dreamcast. In a shocking twist, I have a Dreamcast game on the list. No, I promise you I'm not just throwing whatever onto it. If Super Godzilla is an upgraded Monster of Monsters, then Maximum Impact is an upgraded Super Godzilla. It's a vicious cycle. Once again, you play as Godzilla rampaging through city stages and eventually combating opponent kaiju bosses. This time, the graphics are impressive 3D visuals and the boss fights consist of entirely Heisei-era kaiju, with 2 brand new incarnations of Moguera and Super Mechagodzilla, exclusive to this game. I actually played a bit of this at G-Fest, and it was pretty fun. It's a third-person action game similar to God of War or the character action games from Platinum. Controls take a bit to get used to, it is a Dreamcast game after all, but once you get the hang of it, it's some good stuff. Number 6. Godzilla Unleashed for the Nintendo Wii. Now this is probably the most widely covered Godzilla game in history. It was released during an age when the internet was at its peak, which allowed for a wide variety of pre-release information to be shared with the fandom before launch. Boasting one of the largest and most diverse monster rosters of all the games featured today, including 2 more original monsters made exclusively for the game, an expansive and epic story mode, gameplay mechanics out the wazoo, it might be shocking to some of you that's not higher on the list. The reason? Motion controls. Oh god, motion controls. Because the game is released exclusively for the Wii, ignoring the PlayStation 2 and Nintendo DS versions, which are completely different, the developers saw fit to map everything around swinging the Wiimote and nunchuck wildly. Either due to shortened development time or not enough bug testing, the controls end up being extremely unresponsive. You'll basically be spending most of your time waggling the controller wildly while mashing buttons, just trying in vain to do one simple move. The presentation of Godzilla Unleashed and the ideas it brings forth are interesting, but unfortunately terrible controls are not enough to place it any higher than number 6. Number 5. Godzilla for the PlayStation 4. The latest game to feature the King of the Monsters has a lot in common with Godzilla Unleashed. It's the most visually impressive Godzilla game so far and features a very large roster of monsters to play as or fight against. It's also the most film-accurate game out of all of them, although that begins the reasons as to exactly why it's not any higher on this list. The biggest problem with the game is its feel and the controls. Moving around in this game feels slow and awkward. Instead of turning with the analog stick, you use the L1 and R1 buttons, commonly referred to as tank controls. For people who aren't used to the style of gameplay, this can feel very annoying. And because of the game's strict adherence to film accuracy, the pacing feels more like a movie than a video game. This aspect may be positive in some ways, but it's also a big hindrance as well. The combat system feels good in story mode, but it is horrendously broken for the multiplayer. Some monsters will be impossible to beat in the hands of an experienced player. While it may feature a lot of negative aspects, Godzilla for the PS4 can still be an enjoyable experience in the hands of fans. Time will tell if we'll get another like it, but for now it can sit comfortably in the middle at number 5. Number 4. Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee for the Nintendo GameCube and the Xbox Original. Now we're getting into the good stuff. The first of the Pipeworks trilogy from the makers of Godzilla Unleashed, they started off strong with one of the most polished games on this list. While the roster may not be as big as some of the other games we've covered, the mechanics and combat system more than make up for it. The controls are responsive, and hitting a fierce attack on your opponent feels mighty. Unlocking new characters is quite fun and challenging. The amount of gameplay options via cheat codes leads to some interesting party game fun. A great first step for Pipeworks and one of the essentials for the Nintendo GameCube. Number 3. Godzilla Kaiju Daikessen for the Super Famicom. Another Japanese exclusive for the Super Famicom, or Super Nintendo to English fans. This is one of the most fun and also heartbreaking Godzilla games out there. Fun because it's a 2D tournament fighter in the style of Street Fighter, with great controls, sprites, combos, and special attacks, but heartbreaking because it never got a US release. Even more sad, it was advertised in Nintendo Power as having an American release, but ultimately it was never the case. It's possible to find ROMs of this game online, but one can't help but feel sad that a game like this was never given a proper release, not even through any virtual consoles. Despite its lack of availability, it's still one of the most solid games on this list and definitely worthy of placing as high as number 3. Number 2. Godzilla Domination for the Game Boy Advanced. This is definitely a personal pick for me. Godzilla Domination was the very first Godzilla video game I ever got the chance to play. It garnered me a few friends in early elementary school, and I proudly took it everywhere I went. Normally, love like this would be considered purely nostalgia, but looking back on it years later, it's still a very well-made game. The controls feel tight, the moves are awesome, the difficulty is challenging but not impossible, and the music. Oh my god, the music! My absolute favorite aspect of this game is the fantastic soundtrack by Jake Kaufman, who went on to do the music for Shovel Knight and the Shantae series. This is also one of the few Godzilla games with regional differences. In Japan, the sprites for Godzilla, Mechagodzilla, and Mothra are altered to look more like their recent, at the time, Tokyo SOS counterparts, with Godzilla becoming gray and introducing the chest scar, Mechagodzilla becoming Kiryu, and Mothra becoming more dusty colored. All in all, a satisfying and very well made handheld game, but not the best of all time. Number 1. Godzilla Save the Earth. Take the solid and intricate gameplay mechanics of Destroy All Monsters Melee, expand the story mode with brand new cutscenes, throw in about 15 more monsters, and you've got the best Godzilla game of all time. There's a reason this game has become the Smash Bros. Melee of Godzilla games, with continued playthroughs and tournaments at every G-Fest since release. It's the most solidly designed Godzilla game and features a large roster of characters, each with their own unique attributes and moves. No clones here. If you're tired of the game's normal combat modes, you can also access a variety of mini-games and challenge modes, each unique and a lot of fun. Godzilla Save the Earth isn't a AAA title from a big-name developer, nor is it going to win any Game of the Year awards, but it's absolutely the most solid and well-rounded Godzilla game, earning it number 1 on my list as the best Godzilla video game. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. What are your favorite Godzilla games? Let me know in the comments below. See you in the next video.